Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh. The Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Ripp. Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Ripp live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.
It's exciting that the Business Boutique was made for you.
I know that I can make a difference in people's lives, and I want to do that.
Hearing a lot of what other people are going through is really healing in a sense and motivating as well.
I have the world in my hand, and I can do whatever I want to.
Learning from some of the top leaders who can make these dreams a reality is just so exciting.
It ignited a passion in me to know she can do that, we can do that too.
I'm so blessed to have heard the podcast that led me to this moment.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Business Boutique Podcast. I'm Christy, Wright, and today we are talking about women and business. Later on in the show, I'll be interviewing financial journalist, author, and speaker Jean Chatzky about her story and how she makes it as a woman in business. We'll also hear the story of April Perry and how she went from being a stay-at-home mom to owning her own business. I'll also be answering your questions. But first, let's talk about being a woman in business. Now, I'm sure it's no surprise to you guys that men and women are different. We're wired differently, we communicate differently, we lead our families differently, and we certainly approach business differently. So I want to spend a little time today teaching you how you can turn your challenges as a woman in business into opportunities, how we can leverage our unique strengths that we have as women and make a difference in the marketplace, but of course still have a life at the same time. You know, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the show Nashville, but I watched this religiously with my husband because, since I'm from Nashville, I loved watching the different scenes. Well, I can tell you, we followed the characters, and the main character is Juliet Barnes, and she's a famous country music singer. She has a husband named Avery, and they have a little baby girl. Well, there was one particular scene that stuck with me. It was about a year ago, and Juliet was feeling the mom guilt. She had to be pulled away to perform on stage for a concert, but Avery decided to come and bring their little girl and stand in the audience. She's standing on stage performing one of her most famous songs when she looks out in the crowd and sees Avery holding their little girl. And their little girl is sick and she's crying. Avery's trying to hold her and trying to comfort her and trying to keep her calm while Juliet is trying to keep it together and perform her hit for all of her fans. And as I was sitting there on my couch watching this scene, y'all, I couldn't help but feel that guilt for her. You could see it in her eyes, partially because she's a great actress, but you could also see that guilt that so many of us moms have experienced. She felt pulled. She wanted to be on stage doing what she was created to do, and she wanted to be by her husband's side holding and comforting her little girl. That tension, that guilt where your heart feels like it's being ripped in two is oh so real. You know, I've been in those shoes literally at times. I've been on stage where my son is across the country. You know, just a few episodes ago, I told you guys about the time that I was at our Business Boutique one-day event in Irvine, California, and my son was across the country hanging out with his dad. I was in my green room before I walked on stage with tears streaming down my face because that day was my son's 2nd birthday. Now, I wanted to be at our Business Boutique one-day event. I love the work that I get to do. But of course, I wanted to be with my son on his birthday. We all have those moments. In fact, you can't be a mom and have a family and have a business and not have those moments. The truth is, there's going to be times when your heart is pulled in multiple directions. And as women, this tends to affect us a little differently than it does men. As a generalization, men tend to value themselves by what they do, whereas women, we value ourselves by our relationships. We're also a little more on the emotional side, and I'm sure my husband would testify I am in the extreme category. I've got a lot of feelings, y'all, just feelings all day, every day. In fact, research shows that within the first 5 minutes of talking to a man, he'll tell you in some way what he does. And within the first 5 minutes of talking to a woman, she'll tell you in some way how she feels. So this is the language that we use. often, men tend to find their identity in their work, and women tend to find their identity more in their roles or their relationships. Now, it's not that women don't value work. A lot of us value the work that we do, but we don't tend to find our identity there as much as we do in our roles and in our relationships to other people. And if you're a mom, you know this all too well. I remember from the early days of being pregnant with my first son, Carter, my body felt hijacked. I was sick and tired and sick, and my plans were derailed and things went wrong, and everything I wanted to do, I couldn't seem to do. And you know what? When that little baby came bouncing into this world, not much changed. I still got sick, I definitely got more tired, and my plans were definitely still derailed. You know, motherhood is a wonderful gift. I don't want to downplay that one bit. But the truth is, it's also really hard. It's beautiful and difficult, and it's wonderful and it's maddening at the same time. If you're raising a family, then you know how intimately and intricately your role as a mother is woven into every fabric of your life. But because this is such an important part of our life, it tends to affect our work in a different way than it does for men. Now, it's not that men don't care about their families. Please don't hear that. But men don't experience the pull or the guilt in the same way that women do. They experience it, and I certainly see that when I teach at EntreLeadership events, but they don't experience it in the same way. That's why I want to spend this episode teaching you some simple tips that you can use to still pursue your passion and build your business, but also not let that guilt drag you down. The first thing I want you to do is be present wherever you are. So wherever you are, be there. Now, I know that sounds really simple. If you're taking notes, you're going, seriously, Christy? But y'all, we don't do this. We spend our entire lives feeling guilty for where we're not. If we're present in one place, we feel guilty for being absent in another place. And we spend our whole lives focusing on the place in which we're absent. If we're at work, we feel guilty for missing out with our kids. If we're with our kids, we feel guilty for missing out on work. We're constantly focusing on what we're not doing. Instead, I want you to shift your focus. Wherever you are, be there. I love how my friend Tony explains this. He says, I'm always driving to somewhere that I love. When I'm driving to work, I'm driving to somewhere that I love. When I'm driving home, I'm driving to somewhere that I love. Do you hear the difference there? See, it's the difference of looking through the front windshield of what you're driving to versus always looking in the rearview mirror of what you're momentarily leaving behind. You know, just this weekend, I took my son to this amazing construction festival at a farm in Eagleville, Tennessee. Y'all, we spent over 4 hours playing on this farm. We rode slides, we fed chickens, we fed the goats, we saw donkeys, we saw rabbits, we rode a train. We had the time of our lives. Y'all, when we left, we were sweaty, exhausted, and so happy. We had so much fun that Saturday morning. Now, do you want to know what I was not thinking about whenever I was playing in fields of corn and riding down slides with my son on a burlap sack? I wasn't thinking about this podcast. I wasn't thinking about my speaking events or my book. I wasn't thinking about coaching or any work at all. I was completely focused on being there with that little boy on that farm. I was present. But you know what? Right now is Monday morning. I'm sitting here with Chris Wright, my podcast producer. I'm in our podcast recording studio, and I'm completely focused on encouraging you in your gifts and in your role as a mom and also a business owner. Here's what I'm not thinking about. I'm not thinking about what my son is doing. He could be at the library or at the YMCA. He could be having a morning snack or taking a nap. I don't know. But what I do know is he's taken care of. That's why I can be here, present, at the office, doing the work that I love to do. I so look forward to getting to record the podcast and write blogs and speak and coach and teach women how to make money doing what they love. But I can only enjoy that and I can only be successful at that when I'm present where I am. So today, here I am on the podcast with you. So the first tip I have for you is to do that exact thing in your life. Whenever you're working, put your head down, be focused, and work. Get your work done and make money doing what you love. Make a difference in the marketplace and serve your customers because I promise you, the world needs what you have to offer. But when you're home, and maybe that's the same place, but you decide to shut it off, step out of your craft room or your home office, turn your computer off and shut it all down. When you decide to do that, when you switch gears into mom mode, be there. Turn the Etsy notifications off on your phone. Turn your computer off. Look your kids in the eyes and be fully present with them. Whether you're riding bikes with them or just making cookies, or if you're taking them to a construction festival to ride big bulldozers, I don't care. Whatever you're doing with them, be with them. Look them in the eyes and be present for those moments and those memories that matter. So the first tip I have for you is wherever you are, be there. Now, the second thing I want you to do is I want you to remember who you are. Here's what I mean by that. Often we find our identity in motherhood, and that's not a bad thing. Being a mother is a wonderful thing. Or maybe you might even find your identity in your work. But being a mother or being a business owner are not who you really are. Who you are is a daughter of the God of the universe. You know, God created you with a set of gifts and strengths and talents. He created you unique and beautiful. He created you for His purposes and His glory. You know, when we get so caught up in our identity in motherhood, it's easy to lose sight of our very first and most important role on this earth. We are a daughter of the King. And if I'm honest, a lot of the times that I get stressed out in my life, a lot of the times that I feel like a failure when I'm picking my child up late from school, or I forgot my diaper bag, or I screwed up on an order at work, is because I'm looking for my identity in those places. And your identity will never be found in those places. Instead, I want you to remember who you are. I want you to remember your role as a daughter of the God of the universe. When you remember that, I promise you this, it puts everything else into perspective. It allows you to take some of your setbacks with stride. It allows you to bounce back when you fall down. It allows you to take some of those other areas of your life and approach them with a little bit more grace. You know that if you screw up on an order or you fall short with a customer, it doesn't define you. You are not a failure because your identity is not found in your business. And the same is true with your family. If for some reason you forgot your child's shin guards for soccer practice again, or maybe you forgot the science fair project is tomorrow, or maybe somehow you've disappointed your child and let them down, you know your identity is also not in motherhood. Being a mother and being a business owner are both wonderful aspects of your life, but they're just that. They are one part of who you are. Who you are is so much more than that, and that should be good news because the pressure's off. You don't have to be perfect in any particular area of your life. You can just remember who you are. Remember that you are a child of God and you have gifts to offer each of these different areas of your life. So the first thing I want you to do is be present wherever you are. The second thing I want you to do is to remember who you are. And the third thing I want you to do to be successful in business and have a family, if you have one, is to tell your story. You guys know that I love social media, and you can use social media really well for your business. It can help you build your bottom line. It can help you build your customers. But as we know from experience, social media can lead down the road to comparison, like my friend Rachel Cruz talks about. Social media can put pressure on us to feel like we have to be perfect. Every photo we post has to have perfect lighting and perfect color schemes. Everything we do in our business has to be perfect. Everything in our homes has to be perfect. I'll be honest, I struggle with this myself. I don't post pictures of my living room looking a complete mess. I don't post pictures of my kitchen when my boys have absolutely destroyed it and streaked peanut butter all over the walls. I don't post those photos. I don't want people to see them if I'm honest. But the truth is, those moments where I am honest, where I post the hard stuff, where I tell my story of struggle of being a mom and being a business owner are the very things that give people hope. You know, I posted something on Instastory a few weeks ago about always being late, and someone responded, "I would have never thought you were late." I'm like, why would you think that? If you talk to my husband or coworkers or anyone who's ever met me ever, they would tell you, I am always late everywhere I go. Or another time recently, I posted a different Insta story about a time when I went to work for a big presentation in front of our entire staff team and realized at 4:00 that afternoon, 8 hours after I'd gotten to work, that I completely forgot to put on makeup that day. I did an Insta story about it showing just how plain and somewhat asleep my face looked. You know what? These comical moments where things go wrong and I screw up and I fall short, while they're a little embarrassing to me, are the very things that make people feel encouraged. It reminds them, you know what? You don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have a perfect kitchen. You don't have to have a perfect business. You don't even have to have perfect makeup to still be successful. The truth is, those moments might be the thing that connect with your customers more than anything else you post. I share stories of my struggles, stories where I have mom fails and no makeup on, because that is what connects with people. That's what makes an impact and encourages them that you don't have to have it all together and you can still have a successful business. People will be impressed with your success, but they will connect with your struggle. I want you to really get that. People will be impressed with your success, but they will connect with your struggle. So tell your story. Share your struggles. Whatever you're going through as a mom, share it with your customers. Whatever you're going through in your business, share it with your customers. Because you know what? You don't have a work life and a home life. You don't have a work part of you and a home part of you. There's just one you. And when you tell your story and you share your heart with your customers, I promise you, it will connect with them in a way that nothing else can. People crave authenticity. People crave vulnerability and raw, real, behind-the-scenes moments of getting to know who you are and what you represent. So that's why my third tip for you is to tell your story. Share your heart, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the embarrassing. And I promise you, if you do, I'll be right there beside you. I'm posting Insta stories of the latest shenanigans I've gotten into and the crazy things where I'm falling short with my kids. We're all in this together, and building a business and raising a family is messy because you know what? Life is messy, but that's okay. You've got this. Just use that to tell your story and connect with your customers even more. So my 3 tips for you on how to be a businesswoman and still be a mom at the same time are: number 1, be present wherever you are. Number 2, remember who you are. And number 3, tell your story. I hope these 3 tips encourage you to leverage the unique way that you're wired as a woman to not only have a family and have a life, but of course, pursue your passions unapologetically and build your business so that you can make money doing what you love. You guys know that I recently launched the Business Boutique book, and this spring when I was on book tour, there was one particular question I got asked again and again about the book. Why did you write the book specifically for women? And I thought, you know what? That's a great question. Well, of course, as we've talked about, men and women are wired differently. So I thought, well, if I write it specifically for women, I can meet them exactly where they are. So let's look at one attribute of women. As we've talked about, we're more relational. We value ourselves by our relationships. That's why in the Business Boutique book, I didn't spend any time talking about customer service. Now, you guys probably know, customer service is really important in business. You've got to be able to take care of your customers or you're out of business. But you know what? In the Business Boutique book, I didn't spend any time talking about customer service. Why? Because you don't have to tell a woman to take care of people. We do that intuitively. We are so relational, we can't help but take care of others. But then you think of the other side of that attribute. When it comes to things like selling or setting policies, or pricing, or paying ourselves, well, we get a little squirmy. We get a little awkward and uncomfortable because why? Because we're so relational. We just want to take care of people. We don't care about the money. That's why I spend a lot of time in the book talking about how to make money and how to keep it and how to not feel bad about it, how to sell without being pushy, how to price and set policies and pay yourself. I wanted to meet you exactly where you are. The truth is, I wrote the Business Boutique book for you. I record these podcasts for you. We have the Business Boutique blog and website and academy for you because we are wired differently as women. That's not a bad thing. That's a beautiful thing. You have these amazing gifts and strengths that God has given you that you can bring not only to your family, but to the marketplace as well. So I hope these 3 tips encourage you that you can be not only an amazing mom, but an amazing businesswoman also. You know, we could talk about these ideas all day, but nothing is more inspirational and impactful, I think, than seeing someone who's actually doing it. That's why I'm so excited about my guest today, Jean Chatzky. Jean is a financial journalist. She's an author and a speaker, and she's also the financial editor for NBC's Today Show. Jean is a mom, and she has made it work along the way. Jean, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's nice to be with you in person.
Yes, and I know, you've been a friend of our company of Dave, and we work together on this whole money mission, but I love your story that I've read leading up to today and hearing, you have this level of success now. We're looking at your 10th book that just launched a week ago, and you've got a podcast, and you're doing all these things. You're a contributor to many media outlets, but you know that it didn't start that way. It started years ago of just getting kind of those beginning stages. So take us back there. Take us back to what that was like getting started.
Sure. So I got started in journalism. I knew coming out of college that I wanted to be a journalist. I got a job at Working Woman magazine, which doesn't exist anymore, but was a real mishmash of finance and careers with food and fashion. And I was working for the business editor, and I discovered that I really liked writing about business. It was something that I was comfortable with. I liked using numbers to tell the story. I'd been a bit of a math geek in high school, so that was a good fit. And so when I left there, I really wanted to go be a business journalist, like that business journalist with a capital B, and I could not get a job to save my life because all the business magazines thought Working Woman was a joke.
Now, what year was this?
This was 1988.
Okay. So was Working Woman as a magazine kind of new at that time as like an idea of?
It wasn't new, but it wasn't old. It had been around for maybe 10 years, and it came around sort of out of the feminist revolution, and Ms. was hot at the time, and Gloria Steinem, and, all of those things. Working Woman led to Working Mother, which still does exist online. And it was all about, every headline was breaking the glass ceiling. Sure. But I wanted to break a different sort of a ceiling and work at a magazine like Business Week or Forbes or Money or Fortune. None of them were interested in me because they thought that I didn't have the chops. And so I ended up doing a lot of different things. I went to cooking school. I freelanced a little bit. I ended up applying for a job in equity research on Wall Street because I, at some point, started to think about what business journalists really do. And what they do is talk to companies, talk to CEOs, dig into the numbers, write reports. It's very much like what Wall Street research analysts do. And that was a fairly easy job for me to get because they wanted somebody who could write to help them with their reports. So I did that for a couple of years. Got a job after that at Forbes magazine as a fact checker, took a big salary step back, and basically started on this trajectory of working at personal finance magazines and financial magazines. Ended up on the Today Show after I was recruited to join Smart Money magazine for the launch. They started putting everybody on television, and I was good at it, so they kept me on. And the real shift for me was actually when I got fired from Money Magazine, which happened about 10 years ago now. Magazines just have been cutting their budgets and cutting their budgets and cutting their budgets. And I was swept along in that. And it forced me down the path of starting my own business.
Wow.
I had a bunch of side gigs along the way. I had done some speaking, done some other writing, done some financial coaching, and I just decided I was going to start my own thing. And so I formed a company. I remember going through the forms with my accountant and what do I do? Why does it have to be in Delaware? Coming up with a name for this company, which I did spur of the moment, and have built a business. And I now have a couple of employees, and I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I really wanted somebody else to deal with the health insurance and somebody else to deal with the payroll and somebody else to deal with the fact that, oh my gosh, we need a letterhead and a logo and a website because it's complicated, or at least it can be. But I wouldn't go back. I really wouldn't go back at this point. I think being an entrepreneur is exciting and freeing, and you can change it up when you want to change it up. And so I was dragged into this by my hair, but I'm here to stay.
I love your story because it's amazing. I'm sure there's so many women listening right now going, oh, that's me. I mean, they're in maybe some of those earlier stages, but they're thinking, I'm experiencing a setback. I was hearing you as you were talking, not only getting fired, but getting rejected from these other publications that you wanted to work for, and even taking a step back, like you said, or taking a salary cut to do something for a season, but all of those were stepping stones to where you are today. And so there may be a season of struggle, but all of those led to what you're doing now.
Yeah, and what I tell people, and we talk about this, I was telling you before we launched this show that I have a podcast called Her Money that I think our listeners are probably very much the same people, women who want to make more of their money, their lives, their resources. And what I tell the listeners on my podcast is that you got to go through the doors that open for you. You know, maybe they're just a window. You know, it could be a little crack, but if you can see daylight, you have to make yourself walk through because those chances are your opportunities. And sometimes you make them for yourself, but other times they're there and you have to get yourself to take advantage of them.
That's a great piece of wisdom. And I love what you said a second ago, too, where you said, I didn't plan to be an entrepreneur. I didn't plan to start my own business because it can be hard at first. And many women listening, many women that come to the Business Boutique, they're kind of at that wall. And I call it a wall because the initial stages of business are so exciting. You're like, ooh, and a logo and a name and colors and graphics. And then you hit a wall. You're like, oh, shoot. What about business licenses? And what about taxes? And how am I supposed to do this thing? And many of them, that's the point at which they give up. That's the point at which they decide, you know what? I'm not business-minded. I'm not cut out for this. I'll keep this a hobby. I'll just work my full-time job. You know, I'll give up on this dream. But they don't have to because from your experience, if you can get past that wall, if you can get help for the areas that you're weak or answers for the questions that you have, whether it's a tax professional or, you know, having your spouse speak into some of the business sides that maybe you don't understand that they do, or a friend, whatever that looks like, most women, I would say all women, say the exact same thing you do. They say, oh, I'd never look back. Yeah. Now they love it, but they didn't know they could.
And you need to feel comfortable doing exactly what you just said. You need to feel comfortable owning what you don't know and going out in search of that information. And I learned that I didn't come to personal finance as any sort of an expert. I came to personal finance as an English major out of college who was, by the way, not very good with my own money. And I learned in reporting what to do. And then once I knew what to do, I did it. And once I did it, I felt confident in doing it. There's a bit of faking it till you make it involved. And whether you're selling and you're not comfortable with the idea that, oh my gosh, I'm selling something that I made. Or you are dealing with a legal issue or a tax issue, you get the information and then you just have to do it. And it will be okay on the other side. It won't be okay if you don't do it.
It's interesting because I did research for a few years before we launched our first event a couple years ago, and I saw these glaring themes of how we're wired as women that are unique opportunities, but they're also challenges. So, for example, women, we are wired much more relational. So we value ourselves by our relationships. So, for example, in my book, Business Boutique, I don't spend any time talking about customer service. And here's why. Because it's intuitive to us. Like you don't really need to teach customer service. We know how to take care of people. But to your point that you just said, when it comes to selling something or putting a price on something or setting a policy or standing our ground or taking money from someone else, like when we're selling something, that transaction of like we're asking for money for the value that we're offering, we get squirmy and uncomfortable and awkward. And it's this huge setback because we're so relational.
And once you have that price, I mean, that price is a really interesting emotional point of contention, I think, for a lot of women because you know what you want to charge. You know why you think you're worth it. And yet we live in this society where everybody feels free to haggle. And you're going to get pushback on that price. And you have to be able to believe, know what it costs to make it, know what it costs in terms of your time, know what you put into it, know what other products in the marketplace are charging. And don't be afraid or ashamed of asking for your price because if you're not going to believe it, nobody else is going to believe it.
I love that you just said that. That's exactly what I said. I said, if you don't believe in your business, no one else will. And it really comes down to that core belief. And, one of the things that you and I were talking about even before we started recording was this theme of fear. And I see it in business and you see it in money and business. And it's interesting how I feel like women are more fear-based. Like we're naturally more fearful. I was reading a book the other day. I have 2 boys that are under the age of 2. So my hands are full. But I'm trying to learn about boys because I grew up and I didn't have brothers. So I'm like, let me learn about these boys.
I've got a son and 2 brothers. I've got it going on.
Yeah, you could teach me the way. But I was reading this book by James Dodson and Bringing Up Boys, and it talked about research shows that as early as age 4, 5, and 6, children exhibit different qualities, and boys exhibit more risk-taking qualities, and girls exhibit more risk-averse qualities. So, for example, they researched and they showed that girls break sooner when riding their bike. and they're more likely to try to avoid ever making the same mistake twice. Whereas boys, they're like, they attribute it to bad luck. Like, oh, my luck will be better next time.
Yep.
Well, you think of the implications as women in business where this fear comes into play of, I don't want to try something new, or I'm scared I'm going to fail, so I'm not going to try it all. And you can't be in business without risk. You can't,
and you can't be in the markets. You can't be in a 401k without risk. I mean, you can if you put your money in a money market, but we don't want you to do that.
Right.
And neither do you, because you need the growth. I saw a study last week that makes me think that there's hope where this is concerned.
Okay.
That looked at women investors and found that when women have the same amount of information, the same amount of knowledge that men do, or at least rate their knowledge at the same level that men do, then they're willing to take the additional chances, the additional risks that men are willing to take. Okay. And what that makes me think, I mean, I agree with you. I am a woman who likes to know the answer to every question before I ask it.
Right.
That makes me feel better and safer.
In control.
And in business and in investing, it's not possible.
Right.
It's not possible. So we have to arm ourselves with as much information as we can, but then we have to take action to get our confidence levels up.
Right.
And that just means doing it.
Exactly.
You got to do it enough to know that you can do it.
Right.
Like riding that bike.
That's exactly true. And it's interesting. One of the things that I've noticed is regardless of the stage of business, many of the women I work with, they can only see a little bit ahead of them. So they can say, okay, well, my goal is to make $5,000 this year or pay for soccer camp for my kids. But as they achieve that, then their goals next year get bigger. And as they have a win, it gives them confidence to have bigger goals. And it's exactly what you said. I remind women all the time, the antidote to fear is action.
Yep.
Just start doing it. And then you're not so scared anymore. You said fake it until you make it. I usually tell them fake it until you feel it, because it's interesting. Before I ever walked on my first stage, I was scared out of my mind. Now I'm not scared, because over time of faking it, it became authentic. I really do feel confident now. I'm not just faking it anymore, but you had to start there. You had to start by just kind of figuring it out as you go.
Exactly.
It's interesting. One of the things I think you were talking about with your listeners, with your podcast and women that you work with, this fear can be a barrier and hold them back. What are some pieces of advice, in addition to faking it and that type of thing and taking the risk? What are some real practical pieces of advice that you would tell women business owners in order to combat their fear to get to those places of reaching their goals?
So a couple of things. And I came in today in part because I have a new book called Age Proof.
Yes.
Living Longer Without Running Out of Money and Breaking a Hip.
Yes.
Which we came to the subtitle, interestingly, before we came to the title, because those are the two big fears. I wrote the book with the doctor, and he's a wellness expert at the Cleveland Clinic. He co-wrote a whole bunch of books with Dr. Oz. And in his world, the big fear is breaking a hip, because what happens? You break a hip, you die, right? And for men, that's more true than for women, actually.
Wow.
In your world and my world, the big fear is running out of money before you run out of time, because we're living so long. So one of the things that we talk about a lot in the book is automating. And how when you can make a good decision one time and set it on a course where it happens over and over and over again, you know that you can count on that success.
Sure.
And so in the world of investing, that's 401ks. It's knowing that the money's just going to continually go into your 401k because you put it on autopilot. It'll be invested in a pre-selected menu of mutual funds that you have already picked out. It just goes. It just happens. But you need to automate things in other areas of your life to know that they will happen and to take them out of your way. So, for example, in my small business, my payroll is on automatic pilot. I set it up. It just happens. I go over it. I make sure it's fine. But it's not something that I have to worry about on a day-to-day basis. And so I know that I can count on it.
Well, it's such a great example, because so many women, especially those in Business Boutique, are in startup mode. And so they are pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. They are in the weeds doing everything themselves, and they don't have to. And so I think that's a great point, because when you look at some things, especially with all the tools and software and apps and resources available, you can automate your email marketing. You can automate your billing and invoicing. There are so many things you can automate that would get you out of the weeds so that you can work on your business and not be in that day-to-day grind. So I think that's a great piece of advice.
And another thing that we talk about, and this is true in both health and wealth, but you really need a team. And even when you're in startup mode, you need your kitchen cabinet. You need people that you can ask for advice.
Yes.
You may need the occasional part-timer or intern. And I like, as a business person, this exercise of looking at the cost of my time, and what my time is worth.
Right.
And would I be better off using my time to do something that actually makes money while delegating something that doesn't? But you can do that in startup mode too.
Absolutely.
You've got some flyers that have to go out or some envelopes that need to be stamped. Is that really worth your time? Or should you be hiring somebody on TaskRabbit to just do that for you for a couple of hours, or the kid down the block?
Right, exactly. I write about this in my book as well, where I grew up in a cake shop. My mom started a business when I was 6 months old. And so I remember being 10 and 11 years old, boxing cakes and taking orders on the phone. And, I was 10 or 11, but mom put me to work.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because not only did I enjoy that and it helped her, but that established incredible work ethic in me. And so whether that's children in your household or your neighbors, like you said, or even what I advise women a lot of times too is you can get really creative. Like you can barter, that type of thing. And so there are ways around it if you don't have the money. But even if you need to pay money for something, like I tell women they need an accountant. Mm-hmm. You need a CPA. And so they always say, oh, I don't have the money for a CPA. I'm like, let's say it's $500. Go out and do what you do.
For them.
And make $500 and pay them. And then you're in your strengths, they're in their strengths, and you're not trying to do something that could cost you huge fines and headaches because you're trying to do something you're not good at. That's not the best use of your time, to your point. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, well, and doing something you're not good at hits at that confidence level, which is not good for anybody, but it also takes you longer to do these things that you're not particularly good at. So for me, that's technology. Mm-hmm. I am not only not good with technology, but it's the thing that makes me want to scream more often than not. And so if I've got something going on, I will delegate that because I know that in my portfolio of time and resources, it's not worth it.
Well, and two, what you're saying as well is your strengths. Mm-hmm. And so you want to stay in your strengths. You're going to be the most effective, the most successful, and you're going to have the most fun. Those are things that give you energy and joy, and delegate or outsource or automate those other things that don't.
And I think too, and I'm sure you talk with your listeners about this all the time, but we all need to be better at saying no.
Yes, preach it. Yes, Jean, we talk about that a lot.
All
it's hard.
All the time, because you've got a busy life. You've got your kids, you've got your business, you've got your volunteer commitments, whatever else you've got your spouse, and you want to say yes to the most important things on that list, but that also means that you have to say no to those other things, or you're going to end up saying no to those more important things.
Right. And I don't think we realize that.
No.
Right? When we say yes to whoever's in our face, whoever's the loudest, whatever fire we have to put out, or whatever volunteer thing we feel guilted or obligated into, we don't realize that. I think we just are focusing on that person in front of us, thinking, oh, I want to make them happy.
Yeah.
But we don't realize, but in effect, what I'm doing is I'm saying no to these other things that are much more important to me. But if we could realize in that moment what we're saying no to, we're saying no to the wrong things.
And I think the key for women like me, because I am, just as you describe, I am innately, I want to make people happy.
Me too, yeah.
And I have tried to get better at not saying yes in the moment.
That's good.
Just saying, I'll get back to you. Mm-hmm. And then I can figure out the right way to say no.
Right.
And sometimes I end up saying yes because I decide that it's something that is worth doing.
Right.
But if you can just get yourself not to immediately jump and say yes, you're much, much better off.
I think that's so good. And, I'm a quick decision maker. And so my husband and I are totally opposites. Like, he is steady. He's slow to make decisions. He likes to think about things and talk about them, then talk about thinking about them, then think about talking about them. This drives me crazy, of course. Opposites attract, and it works well. But he does this to me all the time where I'll ask him something and he'll say, that's interesting. Let me think about that. And you wait like 2 beats. I'm like, okay, well, did you think about it? Can we do this?
You ready to talk about it?
He needs some time to think about it. And there's such wisdom there for someone like me, for maybe some of you guys listening that are like me, that you want to just think on your feet, you're quick decision makers, to force yourself this new habit of giving yourself the space to decide. Because here's what happens. I say yes because I really mean it right then.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to doing it, I mean no. And I'm like, oh, shoot, it sounded like a good idea at the time. And now the reality is I'm tired. I'm resenting that person. I'm regretting the decision. And now I'm trying to wriggle my way out of it, which is not good for anyone.
I know.
That's a great piece of advice. Jean, I think there is such a overlap with our audiences. So I'm curious how you feel about this one topic that I've kind of noticed. I feel like that business can be really lonely. You feel like you're the only one struggling. You feel like you're the only one that doesn't have the answers. Are you seeing the same thing in women that you work with when it comes to money? Because I would imagine your finances are pretty personal.
Well, this is something that we talk about a lot in Age Proof as well. Your finances and your health, we tend to think are very private and very personal. Personal doesn't mean solo. It shouldn't mean solo. You do need a team. You do need your experts in your kitchen cabinet. But I find, especially for women, for many women in business these days, that means working from home. And that's something that I do a lot. And I find that very lonely. And so what I've learned to do is on the days, and it's not lonely for everybody, but if you are a people person, you need to figure out other ways in your days to get that human touch, because it doesn't have to be that you've got somebody involved in your business working with you, but you just need people.
Right.
So on days when I'm working from home, I will schedule, I'm a runner, I'll schedule a run with a friend in the morning, and it'll be an appointment that I know that I have to make, or I'll schedule a meeting in the afternoon at somebody else's office.
Right.
Because it does get a little bit isolating.
Absolutely. And I think you kind of get in your own head when you're like that, right? Like if you're not bouncing ideas off other people, asking for help from other people, collaborating with your team on anything you're working with in business or your finances, you kind of get in your own head. And sometimes I think that's where that fear gets really loud.
And I think also if you know that you've got other women around you who are working on their thing while you're working on your thing, it can be very, very useful to either schedule a once-a-week lunch where you all come in, you all bring your problems, you all solve each other's issues or at least listen to them, or shared office space, which is available inexpensively in a lot of communities these days, where you just are all working out of the same room and you're doing your own thing, but there's somebody else there to bounce it off of.
Sure. And there's an energy created just by being in the presence of other people, especially other people that are on the same journey that you are. We actually, for you guys listening, we have a community online called the Business Boutique Academy. And the idea is to virtually connect women, whether that's in their region or their industry, or, hey, we just all have a common problem. And so to connect them so they have someone that's that safe space of, you know what, we're in this together.
Well, and it's very much in the book we introduce the concept of an accountability buddy, both for finance and for health. And the idea is that you've got somebody that you talk to about the goals that you have and getting you there, and they keep you on track. They help you maintain that sort of accountability, whether you're trying to get rid of debt, whether you're trying to lower your cholesterol, whether you're trying to quit smoking, whether you're trying to run a marathon, whatever it is, it's somebody who knows where you're trying to go, who doesn't think the sun shines out of your you-know-where and will let you off the hook. They keep you honest, they keep you accountable, and they help you succeed. And for business, you can have the same thing.
Man, those people are so valuable for sure. Jean, one of the things I've noticed that's a trend of women coming to our events is we actually have a lot of women that are kind of creating encore careers. And so they may be retired or they just want to pursue their passion later in life. And so they might be 50, 60, 70 years old and they're starting a business. And I know you talk about this in your book. So tell me what you're seeing in this market.
It's so funny. I'm not surprised by that at all, because we'll go around and we'll ask people, what are you doing? And they'll say, oh, I'm retired. And we'll say, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm working. I started a business. Because the two things, they're not singular anymore. Many, many people are working in retirement because they found it keeps them younger, keeps them healthier, keeps them happier to do something that they love. And the financial ramifications are terrific, because when you're retired, when you've already sort of pulled together your nest egg, the pressure to earn an entire income is not all that great. It's nice, though, to know that you've got a sum of money coming in that can help you put off withdrawing money from your retirement accounts, because those 401k dollars and the IRA dollars, they can continue to grow. You can push off taking Social Security, which is great, because if you push it off from 62 to 70, your paycheck could be double the size, which is just huge, and then it lasts for years. And then also there's the whole idea. I mean, if you retire at age 65, you could live to 95. You could live to 100. You could live longer than that. And that's a lot of years to not be doing something you love. And what a lot of us love these days is working, is building our businesses, because these are the things that we're passionate about. So I'm excited that those are the sort of women that are coming to your events.
Yes, it's very fun to see that trend. Well, Jean, I would love it if you would tell our listeners how they can connect with you to find out more about your book and also your podcast and everything you're working on.
That would be great. Thank you so much. The book is Age Proof: Living Longer Without Running Out of Money or Breaking a Hip. You can get it Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. And my podcast is called Her Money with Jean Chatzky. You can find it on iTunes and Stitcher and SoundCloud. My website is jeanchatzky.com. And people should listen because we're going to have you on very soon.
I love it. Well, it's such a great topic as well, though, you guys listening. It's Her Money, and you guys can find that on iTunes because, as you know, with the Business Boutique, we are equipping women to make money doing what you love. So money is critical to winning in business, so that can help you on that journey as well. Jean, as we wrap up, I would love it if you would just leave our listeners with maybe some words of encouragement to go out and win in business.
Absolutely. It's all about progress, not about perfection. So have your eyes on wherever you're going, but understand that it's really about putting one step in front of the other every single day and taking heart in the fact that you're doing well in your journey that'll get you there.
That's so good. Jean, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, now let's listen to the story about a woman who went from being a stay-at-home mom to owning her own business.
I'm April Perry, and I run LearnDoBecome.com. I help women and some men to take better care of themselves, basically getting rid of all the clutter in their personal and professional lives so then they can more fully invest in their families and create a life that they can't wait to wake up and live.
This is April Perry, the owner of LearnDoBecome.com. April's journey began while she was a stay-at-home mom. Now, she's a constant learner, and she was always researching topics in health, family life balance, productivity, and more.
I realized years ago that it was really lonely having a family, and it wasn't as fun as I thought it was going to be. I love my children, but I was struggling and wanted to know, how are people building strong families and doing it well while still taking care of themselves and while still being a person in the process. So I started interviewing all of the great people who I knew, moms and dads who were raising great families. I was at the library getting every book they had on the subject. This was before the internet was as awesome as it is today. And I just went about learning, and I would literally take my kids with me and put the little baby down for a nap and had a clipboard and was taking notes and wanted to know, like, how do you do this?
She took what she learned in her thorough research and past experiences and turned it into something new.
After researching and learning and thinking about it for about 7 years, I decided, okay, I need to start now reaching back and helping the people coming next, because I never wanted anyone to feel as overwhelmed as I had felt. And I thought, I've learned now how to do this, I can help. And then I started learning additional ideas and strategies and realized that family-centered productivity was my thing. So I could help people who felt like they were just inundated with clutter, with emails, with piles everywhere, and I could solve that for them so their lives were clear and clean and they felt like they could actually live again and enjoy their families again. And that's when I realized that's my purpose, is to help people to see that living a great family life and running a business and taking care of yourself while serving God in the process is totally possible. It's just that no one ever really taught you how to do it. So that's my mission, is to help teach people how to do it. LearnDoBecome.com is my main business with my husband, and we had learned a lot in the past. We launched a website way back in 2008 that completely collapsed because we didn't know what we were doing. So we learned the hard way what not to do. But then we learned what we were best at and took those skills, created an online course, and we learned how to market. So we learned how to create ads, how to work with affiliates, how to create a simple funnel to let people know about what we do. And then those who want to come in and join our programs, then we take really good care of them. And so it's completely changed, where initially we were kind of holding our breath thinking, could we really do this as a business? And then we, over the past 6 months to a year, we've been able to take our revenue 10 times what it was. And now it's a matter of reinvesting and learning and growing, and it's amazing because now we can take care of our family working from home together and build a business we love. So it feels so much better than struggling for a lot of years.
April hit some bumps along the way, and she became overwhelmed and overworked.
The biggest obstacle was me and my mindset. And what happened was that I realized as I kind of hit a rock bottom in my life, not necessarily financially, but just I was tired. I felt like I had too many expectations of myself. I was trying to do too many things. I was never saying no, and I was just running ragged. And then I was taking it out on my husband and telling him it was all his fault. So it wasn't really, but I just felt frustrated thinking it's just too hard.
She realized that she was overwhelmed because she had undervalued herself and her time. She also realized that she was giving anxiety a place in her life. She decided to work hard to listen to the right voices and to remember, the critic doesn't count.
I decided one day, I think I'd been in bed the whole day because I was just so down and so frustrated. And there had just been some things that were going on that were hard. And I decided that we were going to make some changes. And I started investing. In time, energy, finding the right podcasts. I started actually paying a substantial amount of money for coaching programs. And what I realized is that I had undervalued myself and I'd undervalued my time. So I was spending time doing things that I could hire out for $10 an hour, but I thought, well, I can just do them. It's not that big of a deal. So I started thinking, well, maybe I could start doing these higher value activities and then hiring out some of these other things, which I did start doing. And that started to ease, my schedule and help bring support. And then I was actually building my programs and marketing and starting to see the results come, which then enabled me to relax. So I felt like mindset was the biggest thing for me. I went through a lot of different things and decided, who are the voices I'm listening to right now that I need to stop listening to? And who are the voices I need to start listening to? And how can I actually take what I'm really excited about and then apply it? How can I make time for that? And I think that what often keeps us down is either beliefs we have about what we're supposed to do or beliefs we have about somebody else having control over us. And so I found in my case, I had problems with both. I've actually been reading this book by Dr. David Burns, who's one of the leading psychiatrists in the world. And he said that the most anxious people in the world are usually the nicest because they're people pleasers. And I think that's very common with women, especially really nice women who want their families to be happy and want to do well in business. And they're people pleasers. And so what happened were there were a few voices in my life that were bringing me down and trying to control me and trying to get me to feel less than I was. Sometimes, especially when you work online, you can have negative people that you've never met, who have never met you, And so it was a variety of different voices, right? Some of them were people who were close to me and some of them weren't. And so what I started doing is in my head, I would imagine, who are the 5 actual people in my life who honestly want the best for me? And I just called them a little internal board of directors. And then whenever I would hear a message that kind of brought me down, I would think, well, what would this internal board of directors say to me? And every single time it was, they would tell me not to listen to that voice. They would tell me that I have skills and abilities that I can use. All those things that are true, but you just don't believe. And so I identified a few of the voices I was just going to stop listening to. And I figured out how to start spending less time listening to those voices and more time listening to the voices that believed in me. So that was number 1. And then number 2, I'd actually had some experiences working with people who weren't helping me, but I wanted to either keep them on because I felt bad or, things like that. And so I did change up our staff and, that was hard because you want to do a good job and you want to be a good mentor. And really, as I look back on it, I could have handled things so much better from the beginning, but it didn't work out that way. So it worked better to kind of have a clean slate and start new. And I can't tell you what freedom that gave me to actually realize I can choose for myself. I get to run my own life. I get to decide each day which voices I listen to. That was it elated me. I think just the courage to say my business deserves the best that I can give it. And that means I've got to have the courage to cut out anything that's just dragging me down.
Building the business with her husband has been challenging, but she's the first to say that it's also incredibly rewarding.
He worked in corporate jobs and stuff with real estate and business development and had really good jobs, but he wanted to be home with us and he wanted to work with me and he wanted to just be there for the kids. And so the schedule we have now is that my husband runs carpools and does laundry, I do groceries, and the whole family has a smoothie every day after school together. The children are around us, both mom and dad are there. Our marriage is stronger than it's ever been, and that didn't happen easily. Like the first couple of years working together across the desk, we kind of bothered each other a lot, and it was super hard, which I think it's good to admit that things aren't always easy, and there was stress and strain as we were trying to figure it out, but we kept working at it. Working with my husband, for us, we had to learn how to communicate and how to work together. For example, because I'm a woman, I have hormonal fluctuations, and I'm totally okay admitting that, but I have certain days that feel hard. And we've learned, like, when I'm not myself, I need to rest more. And I think what that's done is help me, and I just need someone to remind me when I need a break. And I think that's one thing that women especially need to recognize is that we are human. We can't run ourselves like machines and expect ourselves to have 100% energy and optimism every single day. So by us learning how to work together, and conversely, I will say my husband has grumpy days. So if there's a lot going on, maybe there's some issues with either family or, coworkers or things like that, and he's having a hard day and he's grumpy, we've just learned not to talk about the important things during that time. But then when we are both feeling good, we move forward and we collaborate, and it pays off to do that. So it's well worth it.
Though it has sometimes been hard, the lives that April impacts give her the energy and motivation to keep going.
Every time I teach a class and someone says, I have been praying for exactly what you have to offer. Thank you so much for going out of your way to do this. And thank you for teaching me, and thank you for being there. And people are in tears, just so excited. That feels so amazing, and it feels rejuvenating to me. That makes my work so worthwhile. I mean, I would do this for free if I could. The fact I get to run it as a business and get paid and support my family doing this, that's just icing on the cake. But I want every woman to be able to feel that empowerment. And I think that's one thing that every woman needs to realize is that when you have a talent and a gift inside, which you do, everyone does, even if they haven't seen it yet, that talent or gift needs to be out there for other people.
April says she feels alive when she's working in her strengths, and she encourages others to break through the walls that keep them from doing the same. And a fun fact for you guys, April was also an attendee at our Business Boutique Nashville event.
I've had the best time actually engaging with the Business Boutique. I think I'm one of Christy's best podcast listeners. Every time I get the email, I am on the podcast listening to all of it. And there's a couple of things. Now, number one, I love Christy's energy, and I love the energy of those coming together. These are people using their gifts who are blessing other people's lives. And I feel so privileged to be able to be on the receiving end. And then it makes you inspired to turn around and think, maybe, just maybe, that little scary idea inside could actually make a difference.
Oh, I love April's story. I'm so excited because we have another Nashville Business Boutique event coming up this fall on November 2nd through the 4th. This year we have an amazing lineup that includes Rachel Cruz, Rory Feek, Donald Miller, Pat Flynn, Patsy Claremont, Molly Pittman, Nicole Walters, and more. And of course, you know that I have a special code just for you, my podcast listeners. When you use the code BBWright at businessboutique.com, you'll get $10 off any ticket to the Business Boutique event this fall. That's BBWRIGHT. I know you're going to love this event, and I can't wait to see you there. All right, now I have a few questions that you guys sent me in our Business Boutique community in the group Ask Christy Wright. By the way, if y'all didn't know, we have this amazing community at businessboutique.com where you can join groups and post updates and get advice and encouragement from thousands of other women that are on the same journey that you are. Y'all, this is like a social media for Business Boutique, and it is a circle of trust we created just for you. Now, these are the questions we gathered from our group there. And if you want to send me your questions, you can do so in the community or on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram using the hashtag AskChristyWright. Our first question comes from Cynthia. Cynthia writes, "My business is going to be about helping people set and achieve goals based around getting rid of victim thinking and taking back their life. I've started going live on Facebook, and I have so many ideas, but I don't want to overwhelm the few viewers I have. I have 3 things I want to talk about. One is a basic foundation thing. One is sharing my progress on something I'm currently working on. And the third is something that I want to do and is probably going to be my next step. So what do you think? How do I decide on what topics to do first? Thanks so much for what you're doing. I never would have even considered this a possibility if it wasn't for your podcast and book. Cynthia, thanks so much for saying that. That is the best compliment I could receive because I love giving people hope in their dreams. And it sounds like you've got some big dreams. Here's what I would do if I were you. I would post the foundational things first, and here's why. Everything you do, everything you write, and everything you post needs to have your reader or viewer in mind. Remember, the question they're thinking all day, every day is what's in it for me? So they're probably not interested in what you're doing now. They're probably interested in what they need the most. And if they need the foundational stuff first, then you've got to give them that. I'll give you a great example. We'll have a business boutique event this November in Nashville, and I will walk people through the plan to start or grow a business. Now, if you already have that information, that's great because we're going to talk about a lot more stuff, but you still have to start with the foundation. You need to start with the basics so that you can grow and build on it from there. I know you're excited about what you're doing now, and I know you're excited about what you're going to do next. I encourage you to capture those thoughts, take notes, and save them for when you're ready to post that. But right now, meet your audience where they are. Speak to them where they are and give them what they need, which it sounds like is the foundational stuff. I hope this helps, and I can't wait to see what you're going to do with it. All right, our next question comes from Katie. Katie writes, I'm having a really hard time coming up with content. I have a single product, which is ideal for people who don't like carrying around a purse or digging through the diaper bag for their wallet. Katie, that sounds like me, so I'm already interested in what your product is. I know you say to establish yourself as an expert in your field and be the go-to person. However, my husband keeps telling me that I don't have to be an expert in anything other than my product. My post should be almost exclusively about the benefits of my product to the customer. I don't agree, but I don't know what else to post that is similar or related to my product that won't confuse my potential customers. Do you have any advice? Katie, this is a really great question, and I'll tell you, the answer is actually really simple. You don't have to be an expert in everything. You don't even have to be an expert in multiple things, but I do want you to be an expert in the problem that you're solving. Now, your product is a solution to a problem, but what is that problem? Is the problem not being able to find your wallet? Is the problem having to carry too many bags? Because I'll tell you, Katie, when I leave the house, I feel like a pack horse with 2 kids under 2. Is your problem moms that are disorganized or cluttered? What problem are you solving through your product? When you know what that problem is, you can write content around that thing. You can share posts and advice and updates on how to declutter or be more organized or pack less items. You can give life hacks and simple tips that relate to your product, but they don't exclusively push your product. See, Katie, you want to add value to your customers. Not only do you want to set yourself up as the go-to person or expert, you just want to help them. They don't want to see every single post from you being a promotion about your product. They want to be helped in some way. So how can you add value or help them? By speaking about the problem you're solving without pushing the product. And then, when you are ready to post an update with a promotion for your product, they can't wait to buy it because they know you, they like you, and they trust you through all of the content and advice you've provided them. So don't focus on the product you're selling, focus on the problem you're solving. That should give you some great content ideas. Great question, and I hope this helps. All right, our last question comes from Noelle. Noelle writes, Hi, Christy. Thank you for all of your wisdom through your teaching and podcast. That's so nice of you to say. Thank you for saying that. She writes, I'm now 8 months into operating my Etsy shop, Melody Lane Crafts. We specialize in playful gifts for babies and mamas. I started the shop when my daughter was a few months old, and I love that I can sew while she sleeps. She's older now, though, and I'm excited to start using my degree again in addition to the sewing business. I'm a music therapist by trade, and I would really love to start running some music therapy groups for babies and parents, as well as memory care groups at nursing homes. I think my 2 business ideas are different enough that I should probably start a second business, but with similar branding. Do you think it would be smart to have a very similar name, such as Melody Lane Music Therapy, or should I start from scratch? Thank you for your insight and for all you're doing to empower us women and change people's lives. Noelle, this is a great question, and I'm really excited to see that you're going to use the gifts God has given you to help people and make a difference. I'll tell you, you really have two great options here. There's not going to be a right answer or a wrong answer. The truth is, if you want to stick with the idea of Melody Lane and change that to Melody Lane Music Therapy, you absolutely can do that. People may recognize you since they are familiar with that name, and it can continue some of the momentum. However, since you're moving into more of a service-based business rather than a product-based business, a lot of times using your actual name can really benefit you. For example, people know me as Christy Wright. We have the Business Boutique, but my name is always attached to Business Boutique. It's Christy Wright's Business Boutique. Those things go together. See, when you use your name in a service-based business, people begin to know you as a person and a personality. You become the brand. And since you would be doing the music therapy and the lessons, they would really become familiar with who you are. So another strong option is to actually change the branding and use your name. Let your name be the primary name of the music therapy business. Now, again, you don't have to do this, but there will be some benefits to using your name as people recognize you as the service provider and the brand. Keep in mind, though, if you completely change the name and the branding, of course, you are starting from scratch. You'll have to do a little bit more work to get people to know you, like you, and trust you so that they can buy from you and you can help them. But I hope this encourages you that neither option is wrong. You've got two good options, and it's up to you because you know what? It's your business, and you can do exactly what you want to. I do want to let you know there's a great resource in the Business Boutique Academy. If you haven't heard of this, Noelle, it's this amazing online resource that has assessments and tools and resources. But one of the great things in the Academy is there's a video training library. There are over 35 videos in there right now on a variety of topics. And one of the big topics I talk about in a specific video is branding. I walk you through how to decide what branding to use for your business. So if you haven't checked out the Business Boutique Academy, that might be a great resource to help you with exactly what you're working through. Thanks for your question, and I hope this helps. All right, well, that's all the questions I have time for today. But if you guys want to learn more about the Business Boutique Academy, guys, this new site was created just for you. We have a 25-question assessment that shows you where you're strong and where you're weak in business so that you can improve and reach your goals. It has customized advice and coaching based on your report. There's a video training library, like I was telling Noelle, where we have tons of video lessons to teach you in a variety of different areas in your business. There's also the community where you have access to thousands of other women on the same journey that you are, and a planning center where you keep all of your notes and plan organized. And get this, I am actually doing coaching for Academy members only. Now, I just don't have the time or the ability to be able to do one-on-one coaching these days, but I do offer coaching exclusively for Academy members. So once a month, I do coaching sessions if you're a member of the Academy. Guys, this value is unbelievable. It's $30 a month, and you get all of this. You get the tools, the resources, the videos, the assessments, and you get to be coached by me every single month. It's a total steal. But of course, you know that I always have a code just for you, my podcast listeners. You can get $10 off your first month or $30 off your first year of the Business Boutique Academy by using the code BBAcademy at businessboutique.com/academy. That's businessboutique.com/academy and use the code BBAcademy. Now, this offer is only good through the month of June, so be sure to sign up today. All right, now your homework for this week is a little bit different. This week, I want you to practice what I taught you, and I want you to share your story, but not just any part of your story, not the pretty parts of your story. I want you to share some of your struggle. Believe it or not, sharing your struggle with others is the very thing that connects with them and gives hope to them. So your homework for this week is to somehow share a struggle that you're having in order to connect with and be vulnerable with all of your friends and followers and customers. Now that's it for this week. Thanks so much for hanging out with me as always, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. For more encouragement on how to make money doing what you love, visit businessboutique.com.
Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh. The Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Rip, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Rip live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.